This is the 6th of 7 baby quilts in this series called Feathered Friends for Jamie. I traveled to Hamilton, Missouri, home of the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and found a quilt in their museum with this sweet bird block, and I fell in love. The fat quarter bundle came from one of their many shops, and I ordered the pattern when I got home. After sewing my other baby quilts from Lori Holt's Vintage Farm Girl, I was ready to take on a more complex piecing project. First, I made one block to make sure I understood the pattern, then I cut the rest of the pieces. The pattern walks you through each component of the block pretty clearly. I made some half-square triangles, draw the sewing guidelines, sew, press open, and trim to size and square. This must speak to my OCD tendencies, but I get a lot of joy out of lining the various pieces up and keeping them organized. These are my pieces for the left-facing block. I thought the trickiest step was to sew the wings together. In order to keep the correct colors on the correct angles, I had to place them in their labeled spots to keep them organized as I sewed. Once they were together and ironed, I trimmed their blocks to size and shape. The other detail I appreciated was the pattern told me which way to press the seams. It helps the corners nest up against one another and reduce the bulk somewhat. The parts to my little birds are coming together, and the final component are the little beaks. Finally, it's time to assemble the blocks. I love this part because you can see all your work and organization come together. Here's the back of the block with seams neatly pressed. The smoother my block, the easier it will be to quilt when the whole top is together. 10 left-facing birds and their friends. Here, the sashing is going in to make the complete quilt top. I was trying to decide on borders. Green with a narrow purple? Nope. I went with narrow piano keys in the colors used for the birds. And here's the quilt top. Now, onto the quilt sandwich and pin basting. My first step in quilting was laying down long anchor lines, stitching in the ditch with my presser foot and the feed dogs up. Before I started my free motion, I practiced my sewing path with a piece of vinyl and a dry erase marker. Then on to stitching. Please pay no attention to the hunching shoulders. It makes my back ache just thinking about it, but it's a good example of what not to do. Now, I'm filling the background with spirals and echoes. For the central pillar, I wanted to do one of the Lori Kennedy motifs called Square Flower. And change the thread. In the borders, I was trying a new motif, moon shapes or sickles. Here's the practice before I went at my quilt. Sickles one way, then the other. Now on to my quilt. Half moon, and around the corner. And onward. Here, I'm practicing moving my quilt in the other direction without sewing, and now with sewing. Quilt top quilted. Voila! Feathered Friends for Jamie is done and ready to be shipped. The last quilt in this series is Around the World for Elizabeth. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.